And that brings us to building our SWAT teams. There are no better builders of teams than Linda and Aaron, as I have witnessed. And so I'm going to ask them to talk about how they went about building their teams. Linda, of course, with the Metro Rail project that Bob and I were involved in, and Aaron initially with the regulatory, and then the COVID issue that hit. So take it away, Aaron.
Yeah, in our case, with both of them, I think it goes without saying that you need to have the team preset and know who they are. And depending on the event and the different levels, it's going to be a different leader or a different quarterback. When it's something like a pandemic, or in our case, the regulatory situation, I was very involved in both of them. I would say the regulatory situation, I partnered with our president, who was very involved. And I thought it was a great team effort. I would tell you also that with the pandemic, well, I think I was the quarterback per se. I would say we had that was all hands on deck, and probably was with most companies, where we had every VP and director level. At one point it was daily calls and it was weekly calls, but we knew who needed to be on. The more it impacts, the more leaders you need involved. You also need to determine if you have internal teams, external teams. In our case, we also had a KOL team, which was all of our physicians that we were communicating with, and then also our customers. And in the first case with the regulatory situation, I mean, we definitely wanted to be communicating with all of them because it was a public event. We received the information through a press release and through headlines before we actually even talked to the FDA, before we even received a letter from the FDA. It was a headline. And we were certainly caught off guard, but we put our teams together real quick. Now for the pandemic, we were prepared for it, and we had these teams already built. But again, you have to determine how many teams do you want? Do you want them internal, external? Are they talking to customers? Are they talking to your KOL team? In our case, in both situations, we were talking with all of them. We had teams for all of them.
Linda?
I echo that. And I think kind of going back to the levels of crisis and identifying what happens for what level, when you get to that most urgent level of crisis, there would typically be some strictures that a crisis of that level needs to get noticed all the way up the food chain to the top within a certain amount of time. So an hour minimum would be a good rule of thumb to say if the Wall Street Journal calls in less than an hour, the top brass needs to understand that we have a crisis going on, and then the SWAT team begins to take their roles and begin to contain the crisis and assess it and understand what's happening. When we're talking about the highest level crises, it's also helpful when you're identifying the people that certain team members are always involved. Whoever your director of communications is always involved. Your COO, your CFO, and those individuals have roles that they would begin to step into as the quarterback might be identified. To Aaron's point, that could differ depending on the situation, because the quarterback needs to be someone incredibly organized, incredibly able to influence the team and make sure things get done, and able to have the reach that they need to have to coordinate all of the efforts that go on in the response team, and has to be so organized that they can just keep everything moving forward and ensure that the follow-up is happening. So that's really a critical thing. So I echo a lot of what Aaron said, and urge people to ensure that their teams are comprised of a few solid team members initially.